Welcome to Ecclesfield. This was once one of the largest civil parishes in all of England, spanning about 78 square miles before its breakup in the 19th century. Its western border was a mile from Cheshire, its southern was just above Derbyshire. In the Domesday Book, it had the Anglo-Saxon name Ecclesfield, with Eccles being the Christian church lying in the treeless area, Felt or Feld. In 1801, it had a population of just over 5,000. In 2001, it had a population of over 30,000. Lying just north of Sheffield city centre, this is the story of Ecclesfield. Ecclesfield, along with the other places in the Chapel Green area, have surprising histories that are something to be proud of and often have connections to Sheffield and further beyond. With a lovely rural retreat like here, that is also where a lot of people and businesses call home, it's no surprise that there is a lot of history here that you may not be expecting. Nail making and file cutting were huge industries in Ecclesfield and indeed the surrounding areas thanks to Sheffield steel. There were also numerous water-powered mills which served a variety of purposes ranging from flour to cotton. For example, in 1510 there was a mill that was being used by a scythe maker. Then there was the Ecclesfield paper mill which had its own dam. However, in 1874 they were fined for accidentally giving 16 people fever when dirty water from their dam spilled out into the river. In 1895, the mill suffered badly from a fire, and in 1920, the dam was bought out by the Working Men's Angling Club. But there is more to the history of Ecclesfield than just the industry, and more historic places. Firstly, there is Ecclesfield Priory. Although there have been records of monks here in Ecclesfield since 1161, the first recording of Ecclesfield Priory was in 1273. The purpose of it was to house Benedictine monks, and the first known prior was Robert de Bosco. The last known prior was Sir Henry de Medbourne, before it was confiscated and passed to St Anne's Priory in Coventry in the 1400s. In the 1500s, the Shirecliffe family turned it into dwelling houses. Then there was the Hall. The hall was built in 1736 as an extension to the priory and was supposedly made out of materials from the priory as well. In 1859, the two owners of the hall, Samuel and Mary Greaves, accidentally poisoned themselves. Whilst preparing salad for their dinner, Mary accidentally served up wolfsbane instead of lettuce, a poisonous plant. They both died in the house that they had lived in since they got married, 56 years before this, with Mary's last known words being, "Oh dear Sammy, it's all over for me." Despite this tragic story, the hall was added to in 1866 by the next owners, and it is now a Grade 2 listed building. There is more here than just the historic sites and the industry too. Sheffield is quite a built-up city, and thus the areas in the Chapel Green region, including Ecclesfield, are known as the Green Getaway for Sheffielders. There are some favourite spots for the local community as well, however, like where we're standing right now. This is Ecclesfield Park and occupies the site that once was Ecclesfield Common. The bandstand behind me and the paddling pool were added in 1930 at the cost of £550 from the Miners' Welfare Fund. Whilst there are a lot of important and fascinating historical and industrial sites here, I don't think there's any quite as important as the church. This is the Church of St Mary. It's one of only 5 Grade 1 listed buildings in the Sheffield City area, and owing to its original rural location, it used to be called the Minster of the Moors. There's been a church here since at least 1141, although with Ecclesfield being known for the church on the field, it's probable that there's been one for here for quite a long time before. The church we see before us, however, built in Perpendicular style, actually dates back to 1478. It was paid for mainly by local parishioners and begun by the local vicar, Thomas Clark. It was completed in 1500. Let's take a look inside, shall we? It's a beautiful interior, but much has changed. The English Reformation of the 16th century saw, under the rule of Henry VIII, the Church of England break away from Roman Catholic power. Under his rule, the dissolution of the monasteries occurred, in which abbeys and priories across the country were torn down. This was done to weaken Roman Catholic influence. Here at St Mary's, the interior was also affected. Whilst we have the privilege of sitting here today, back in 1539 there were actually no seats here and people would have had to lean against the wall. The giant crucifix in here was taken down, as were the figures of St Mary and St John the Baptist. Then, in the 1640s, under the rule of the Puritans, the stained glass windows were also smashed. But St Mary's did have a future. In 1642, the clock was added to the tower. Then, in 1823, under the new vicar, William Ryder, the nave and chancel gained a new roof. Even after the Second World War, the church was being looked after and done up. By 1969, the nave and chancel had received a new roof yet again. In 2003, the kitchen facilities and the toilet were added, and in April 2021, a disabled access was also added. This just goes to show that the church has been doing what it's been doing best for the last 500 years, being a warm and welcoming part of the community. Faith and a warm, welcoming community aren't the only reasons you'd want to visit this church. Just look at the stunning interior. There are also some surprising features here too, one of which being the Richard Scott Memorial. One of the most striking features here at St Mary's is this memorial on the south side of St Catherine's Chapel. Richard Scott lived at the nearby Barnes Hall and was comptroller for Thomas Wentworth, the first Earl of Strafford. He also served Wentworth in Ireland and is actually buried there, as in 1638 he died over there during fighting. This memorial was built in 1639 by William Wright, a London-based sculptor. This was actually made in London and then transported up here. It was restored in 1749 by John Watts, who also lived at Barnes Hall. There are plenty of fascinating and beautiful things to see here at St Mary's, and not all of them are on the inside. The churchyard holds many different stories. Here in Ecclesfield, this includes Dr. Alexander Scott, who was Horatio Nelson's chaplain at the Battle of Trafalgar, and was the person Nelson said his last words to. He was buried here in 1840 at the age of 72, when visiting his daughter Margaret. One of the memorials we're here to visit today is the War Memorial. It was designed by R.B. Brooke Greaves and was unveiled by the Earl Fitzwilliam in 1921. Upon the memorial are the names of the 54 Ecclesfield men who died in service in the First World War, as well as the 36 from the Second World War and 1 from the Falklands War. The design is meant to resemble an altar, and there are numerous symbols on it, including the pelican, a symbol of self-sacrifice. The final memorial to see here before we leave is the Jeffcock Memorial. It used to be a fountain and was dedicated to the Jeffcock family in 1903. The Jeffcocks were a prominent mining family that arrived from Eckington into Handsworth in the 1600s, William Jeffcock became the first mayor of Sheffield in 1843. Park in Jeffcock was famous for losing his life trying to save miners in the Oaks Colliery pit disaster of 1866. In 2008, it was moved from Ecclesfield Park to where it stands today, in the churchyard. Across the road, there is the Black Bull. There's been a pub here since at least the mid-1700s, but here in Ecclesfield, like the rest of the Chapel Green area, it is the people that make up this community. And we're here today to talk to some of the wonderful women who make this community so great.
It's a coffee shop where people come and have a chat and get out and about, you know, and come and make friends and meet old friends and generally have a good time, I think. It was just a nice thing to do, to be able to greet people into our church, our lovely church. We get lots of people that come that want to look round, or people that come that are bereaved or cold and lonely. And I think it's nice to have this space for people to come. I do the rotas so that we make sure that we've got people here on a Tuesday or a Friday morning, make sure we've got enough people to do it, and then we make coffee and tea and toasted tea cakes and biscuits and things, and just generally chat to people, make them feel welcome. A lot of people come just for a walk round, and we show them different things that they want to know, yeah.
I've been a warranted scout leader for 40 years. I know I don't look old enough. And at the moment, I'm a squirrel scout leader. And squirrel scouts are the latest age range started by the scouts, and they're 4 and 5 years old. We have a theme or a topic each week, and so they generally do some kind of colouring and a little activity based around that theme or topic. We play a game. We have a story based on our little mascot, which is a little squirrel called Little Kit. The children take it in turns at taking this little squirrel home each week and have an adventure with it. And the grown-up who they live with writes the story down, and the children draw a picture and they bring it back, and then we have that story each week. And we just have a lovely fun time for an hour each week. Even though it's grown a lot, it's still a village, so that there's people in this village who come to this coffee shop who my mum went to school with. So it's very community associated. So the continuity continues. So it just goes on and on down the generations. So for example, one of my squirrels, his father went to scouts with my son. So it's all very community related round in Ecclesfield, and that happens in the coffee shop as well. It's very community and family orientated, and that's lovely living in Ecclesfield.
Ecclesfield has a rich and varied history. Not only has it been the home of a lot of agriculture and a place of great religious worship, but also a lot of surprising industries as well. This ranges from scythe making to file cutting, from nail making to milling. Ecclesfield has an important and strong industrial past, one that it really should be proud of, but it also has a thriving community today and a future to look forward to.